Okay, so obviously a little more to this equation than simply playing a major scale. We have some specific fingering to talk about, some specific rhythms to go over, all kinds of stuff. So let's start at the beginning and then get into some details. This piece is in 3/4, has a somewhat fast tempo of allegretto, and features some slightly varied dynamics with these rising and falling hairpins you can see throughout the first page here. One thing of interest that's a bit different than what we've seen in the past is this key signature, or scale signature as I like to call it, 4 sharps, meaning that we're using either the brighter scale of E major or the darker scale of C sharp minor. Obviously, the sonority here is quite friendly sounding, we'll say, so it's safe to assume that we're using E major. As part of the formal design of this piece, we actually lose one of our sharps in the second page, putting us into the key of A major. You'll notice all the D naturals throughout those systems, and that's a very common way to get a little distinction between the sound of the sections, modulating to a different tonal area. Speaking of the form, observe that DC al fine, or da capo al fine, at the end of the second page. Well, by this point, we know that this means to go back to the beginning and play till we reach the fine, which is located at the end of the first page, making this a big ABA form piece. Finally, before we jump into our details section, take a quick overview look at the whole piece. Notice specifically how consistent that left-hand accompaniment is and how the right hand for each page is similarly regular. Doing this kind of overview can just help your brain settle into what kind of piece it's working with, and in this case we can pretty clearly see that we have big, regular sections with clear characteristics and almost no deviation, meaning that there are no contrasting transition sections or momentary flourishes or any of that. Just big picture phrases and sections, and knowing that can make it a bit easier to work on. Okay, let's get into some details. So the left hand in this piece is very consistent, so let's get that out of the way first. You can see that we have a series of staccato chords. For this first line, we just go from a basic E chord to an E sus chord, or if you'd prefer, a partial B dominant over a tonic pedal, but doesn't that just seem a little too convoluted? And throughout this piece, we really change chords very little. We have a few leaps to open intervals at the ends of the sentences and some long notes at the end of each page, but for the most part, we're just doing a lot of going back and forth between two chords. So, that said, we really do still want to put an effort into not letting this thick, kind of blocky accompaniment texture stamp all over our nice, gentle melody. And the way we're going to do this is to work towards getting a nice clean staccato and as cohesive a grouping as possible for those chord tones. So we want this, not this. Hopefully you could hear very obviously I was working very hard to make that second one a lot more sloppy. I wasn't hitting the notes at the same time and the volume was less consistent and all that. We want the first one, a nice crisp version. So how do we do this? Well, the trick as usual is in using less of your fingers and more of your wrist and arm. Well, for each chord position, you really want to identify the structure you need and almost lock your hand into place so that you're hitting each of the notes as evenly as possible and as consistently as possible. Now, we don't want to totally lock our hands. We want a little bit of wrist motion and shock absorption, but we do want our fingers to land as evenly as possible. So a little motion here, but not here. Then once you have that, it's just a matter of managing your volume, aiming for much more of a piano, I would say, and making sure you're getting a nice short staccato. Now, wait, you may be thinking, what about those crescendo and diminuendo hairpins? Now, first off, they're meant to be a bit subtle, but mainly for this piece, we're going to apply them more to what's going on in the right hand and to try and keep our left hand accompaniment where it belongs in the background. Now, as I mentioned, we do have a couple of altered positions in the left hand. Real quick, let's jump down to the second system. There in measure 7, towards the end, you can see we suddenly break out of our nice tight chords into a big open interval. And that's a spot to be careful of, for sure. Just making sure you're ready for that jump. And then we have something similar to contend with down in the last system of the first page here. You can see in measures 14 and 15, we do a bit of the opposite, actually, jumping down first to get to a B and G sharp, and then adjusting the G sharp up to A to give us the seventh of that implied dominant chord. Let me play there from measure 13. Now, fortunately, our B section on the second page is really just a simple refashioning of the initial chord combinations. So we'll skip looking at that for now and head back up to the top to start looking at the real area of interest in the right hand. Thanks for watching this lesson from Liberty Park Music. If you enjoyed this lesson and learned something from it, do us a favor, hit that like button. And if you really liked it, share it around. Let your friends and family check it out too. If you want to find more lessons like this or explore other piano-related topics, please come visit us at libertyparkmusic.com. We have full piano courses ranging from beginner to more advanced levels, and everything is online and streaming 24/7 so that you can design your music learning around your schedule and learn in the comfort of your own home from a talented roster of professional teachers and musicians. Come check us out.